That is the main difference, though, is they don't take on the party and they don't win doing it or appear as though they're winning doing it.
I think our community is lost at this time.
This video is for Hassan Piker and Hassan Piker only, so if you're not Hassan Piker, stop watching. It is your duty to the American people, actually, to the entire well-being of the world, to make a response to the Daily Wire. And when I say response, I mean build a company, build a media conglomerate that is in response to the Daily Wire, because that is the pipeline people are going on, and we need to put them on the opposite journey, okay? And we need to be reaching young people in such a way, and I do believe you are the only person at this point who can do this. So just like let me know if you need ideas or thoughts, but I just feel like this really needs to be done. So
this reminds me so much of 2017 when people would like a newspaper would go out of business and people would be like, why aren't you guys buying it and running it?
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't want that. To me,
I think people understand. We already have like a network of like-minded leftist like media outlets that are run independently, from myself to Chapo to Dropsite, you know, Intercept, Majority Report, Means TV, and many others, right? The way to operate a Daily Wire structure business is virtual democracy now as well. It's virtually impossible for like Zeteo, that's another great example. Jacobin. There's no way to do this in the same way that the Daily Wire does it, because they're completely funded and facilitated by like oil barons.
Yeah,
who recognizes the importance of constantly doing propaganda for the right.
There's no like left liberal Robert Mercer, you know?
Yeah.
I think there's like very limited returns on this, but the time to have done it would have been like 8 years ago. But I think just in general, the hyperfixation on like parallel media structures and media figures is sort of also a case of like limited left liberal imagination. What would be far more, you know, you would get a lot more yield out of would not be like a liberal, you know, Charlie Kirk. It would be a liberal like Paul Weyrich or James Dobson. There are very few liberal institutions that are like specifically and specially geared towards winning elections, influencing legislators, enforcing message discipline, scaring elected officials.
Yeah.
Through either the withholding of votes or the organizational capacity of the organization. That they also have the double function of being able to like staff any potential administration with people who are ideologically on the same wavelength, which is, if you look at the conservative movement, a lot of their success was making it so that, like, you know, even when, like, you know, Gerald Ford was president, or someone who wasn't like the first choice of like a Dobson or a Weyrich, they still got their people in the administration. Having structures like that would go such a long way for liberals. And the thing is, they know how to like execute power, but only like within the party.
You can't flood the market with like a million pod johns and expect the same level of results, because like a lot of what like the independent Republican media ecosystem does is directly funded by the exact same billionaires that also fund, you know, the likes of Fox News and all these other outlets and institutions. There's constant cross-pollination. There's institutional legitimacy afforded to all of the content creators on the independent space from mainstream media. But most importantly, and this is something that I have repeated quite a bit, there is a direct ideological similarity between a Ben Shapiro type and the Republican Party, because they're all on board with the same agenda. The Republicans are afraid of their base. The Democrats run away from their base. The Democrats are disgusted by their base. So a person like myself is not being represented in the party's establishment regardless. Now, there are some more progressive figureheads within the Democratic Party that I align with, but even then, there's plenty more room for, you know, the things that I believe in. There's no immediate ideological equivalent versus like Ben Shapiro is almost entirely aligned with the Republican Party down to every single point. So unless the Democratic Party changes its entire policy structure and moves away from third way neoliberalism, it's never going to be an equivalent. You're just going to flood the market with like a million Harry Hassans.
Yeah.
Which they have done. They've done that already.
Yeah, they have a ton of those people. And like the thing is, for the Republican Party and their media structures, we talked about this before with how like Kamala Harris did not have like patter. She didn't have like signature issues or policies. The case put forward by like the Harry Hassan types, by like the shell that comprises liberal parallel media structures, is like, we're not the crazy guys. We're not this. America will survive if we win. There's nothing really to get excited about if you're a lib on the media side. A huge part of like contemporary conservative media, specifically people in the highest strata of online conservative media, was that in the eyes of their audiences, they would take on the party and they would win. Harry Hassan, he seems like a very nice like boy, but he's not doing that. He's not even taking on the party, much less winning.
Yeah.
None of them are
because everyone is just parroting the party.
Yeah,
everyone is just parroting the position of the party. The closest equivalent you have with like internal support from the party is the Pod Johns.
It has all the messaging discipline of like the Cultural Revolution with just towards nothing, towards no actual goal. The Pod Johns, how conciliatory and just spineless they sounded talking about Biden when they were trying to get him to drop out.
And it turns out they had internal polling to show that he was like getting wiped off the table with like 400 electoral college votes to Donald Trump.
I'm sorry, how do you not tell people that?
Yeah, you should save America unironically by openly admitting that. Like that would have been a saving America moment if the moment that they saw that internal poll, they should have been like, this is utterly incomprehensible. Yeah. What the are we doing?
I think people have, I think the way people conceive about this stuff is like very short-sighted, and it betrays like a lack of understanding about just media in general, divorced from politics. And there are a lot of reasons that like you can't create like a left lib Andrew Tate. You can have incredibly successful liberal cultural and media figures and products, but it's never going to be one-to-one. You're never going to create an exact liberal Tucker Carlson. But maybe you can create someone who like fulfills some of the important functions that like a prime Tucker Carlson did, which is like they attack the right enemies, you know? During the primary in 2020, someone who was at a one of the big streaming websites, I won't say who, was like trying to get me to ink a deal, like just me, an exclusive deal. And I would have done it if Bernie had won the nomination, only for the reason that like I felt like I could maybe fulfill that role as someone who can like attack his enemies in a way that like no one else, in a way that he certainly can't or wouldn't. But yeah, people just look at
That's what I said too. Like I would be the top regime pilled propaganda minister if the Democratic Party was like at the very least presenting like OG Swedish style social democracy as its like genuine vision. Like that's not directly aligned with my values, right? That's not completely what I want, but I know that is not only good for America in terms of the direction that we should be heading towards, but it's also certainly successful policy anyway.
This is the problem though. The American liberals, when they are looking at media, they only see the form and not the function. They think that like all these things are what they are culturally because of their exact form. They see like, Fresh and Fit having like 25 girls that they hate who they paid to be there.
Yeah.
And they're just screaming at them. And they're like, oh, people must like this show because they're yelling at those women they hired. And not like the actual function of what any of these things are.
Yeah.
They don't like, Tucker is, I think, like an incredibly talented like broadcaster, right? But his form is not really replicatable for a liberal Democrat. but the function could be. But again, you can't understand the function if your politics is you in your concept of politics, you really never think about like who your enemy is and who is important to have as an enemy.
Yeah. But like, I don't even fully agree with that because like I said, then the Podjons would be the dominant like force in this space because that is what they are. Like the Podjons is the closest equivalent to like a Daily Wire style equivalent, like direct access to the party, constantly having party operatives on board. Like they don't shape policy, but at least like they're channeling the policy. That still doesn't move the needle enough.
Well, yeah, no, that's the problem though, is because like they never take on the party. And like Rush Limbaugh didn't take on the party either, but like
but Rush Limbaugh was represented by the party. That's the point.
Right.
Like, to a certain degree.
But so are these guys, just in the extent that they seem to love everything the party's doing. Like that is the main difference though, is they don't take on the party and they don't win doing it or appear as though they're winning doing it. And also just the fact that like there is really nothing to get excited for inside the party for its own sake.
Oh, they got the internal poll after Harris became the nominee and took over the campaign. No one knew about it before he dropped out, but Biden's inner circle. My mistake. My bad.
Yeah, but still, it's like we all had like an idea of how shitty Biden was doing. With all that they know, I would wager to say that they at least knew quite a bit more than we did.
Yeah. And ultimately, no billionaire is going to fund someone whose overarching cause is the abolition of billionaires. Okay. Like that's not going to happen. At most, you'll get like a billionaire with a pet project, right? For, I don't know, climate maybe, because they're in a competitive sector. Or maybe they're a billionaire that is in the green energy, like renewable energy space or something, right? But you're not going to have someone who's like, yeah, I want someone who's like unconditionally pro-labor, because you're not getting there unless you're like a labor billionaire, I guess.
Well, that is sort of like the spiral of devolution that happened with the destruction of the New Deal coalition, because there used to be a pretty reliable like Democratic donor base that was like, you know, maybe they didn't have like as many individual ultra wealthy guys as the Republican side, but they would have like individual groups of people like union lawyers or, you know, entertainers or people who, if not billionaires, there were enough of them who had enough like disposable income that it did create like it did provide like a dependable cash flow. Ever since the funding of political parties has been so utterly focused on ultra wealthy individuals for both sides, that has been sort of a problem in just how Democrats run campaigns. Like, how can you it becomes harder and harder to run like an Obama 2012 style campaign when, you know, Tony West and like Mark Cuban are helping you run the party.
Yeah. I don't know. I just don't see the signs I've seen from the Democratic Party, by the way, they're asking for money because they're 30 million in the hole.
Tony West really did run the campaign like Uber.
Yeah. Like, where did the money go, man? The money went to all the ads talking about how much they love Liz Cheney. What a disastrous run. Someone said they spent 6 figures on the Caller Daddy set. Building a set for Harris's appearance on the popular Caller Daddy podcast with host Alex Cooper. The interview came out in October and was reportedly filmed in a hotel room in Washington, D.C.
That's what they spent 600,000.
They got 800,000 views on that, by the way. Bradley Martin I was having a conversation with him after because he's pro-Trump, and he was like, "Look at this," and he pulled up Caller Daddy 800,000 views, and then he was like, "Look at this." Joe Rogan, Donald Trump interview, 46 million votes.
I didn't know it only did 800. That's a brick.
Yeah. At the time, people were telling me, like, you don't understand. This is a valuable constituency that she normally wouldn't appear in front of. And Semaphore's very own media guy, what is his name? Max Tani or whatever.
Yeah.
He kept reiterating that, like, you're wrong. And that Kamala Harris campaign did do a lot of like podcast outreach. They went to a lot of successful podcasts. No, they didn't. Joe Biden went on Complex, okay? That is not like a successful organic podcast. That's just media, but on YouTube.